The Consciousness of the Atom, by Alice Bailey. Forward. The discourses delineated herein were articulated within the city of New York during the preceding winter season. The primary objective of this sequence was to elucidate for the attendees the scientific evidence regarding the correlation between matter and consciousness, to facilitate within the audience the discernment of the congruent expression of these relationships and of specific fundamental principles across successively elevated planes of existence, and thereby to engender a profound comprehension of the universality of the evolutionary process and its inherent veracity, and to address, in some measure, the nature of expanded states of consciousness and the augmented existence toward which all of humanity is inevitably progressing. Consequently, these addresses were designed to function as a prelude to the more comprehensive examination and application of the laws of existence and human development generally encompassed by the terminology of occultism. It shall be noted that a significant degree of reiteration exists within this series, as each discourse succinctly recapitulates the subjects explored in the antecedent addresses. As new attendees were present at every lecture throughout the sequence, it was deemed essential on each occasion to provide a synoptic overview of the material previously traversed and the rationale for the philosophical stance subsequently assumed. An additional advantage was discovered in the anchoring of specific fundamental concepts within the intellects of the listeners, concepts which were novel to many, thereby facilitating their capacity to apprehend and readily assimilate the subsequent expansion of the theme. In transmuting these lectures into a literary volume, it has been judged prudent to preserve the complete text of the addresses precisely as they were delivered. Those who are already established scholars of esoteric wisdom will be capable of tracing the trajectory of the argumentation within these lectures with facility. However, for those who approach the contemplation of the subjects herein discussed for the first time, the periodic reiteration of fundamental points may conduce to an expedited comprehension. Indeed, it is for this specific cohort of readers that the volume is primarily intended. Alice Bailey, September 1922. Lecture 1. The Synthesis of Scientific and Philosophical Progression. In the annals of intellectual history, there has likely never existed an epoch entirely analogous to the present. Philosophers and scholars universally are cognizant of two fundamental premises. Firstly, that the boundaries of the arcane have never before been delineated with such clarity, and secondly, that this domain is now accessible with greater facility than has hitherto been the case. Consequently, it may perhaps be persuaded to yield some of its secrets, provided that investigators of every persuasion prosecute their inquiries with resolute determination. The dilemmas confronting us as we examine the established facts of life and existence are amenable to a more precise definition than heretofore, and although we do not yet possess the answers to our interrogations, although we have not as yet unearthed the solutions to our difficulties, and although no panacea lies immediately at hand whereby we might rectify the world's maladies, nevertheless, the very fact that we can define them, that we can indicate the vector wherein the mystery resides, and that the illumination of science, religion, and philosophy has been cast upon vast tracts previously deemed regions of obscurity, constitutes a guarantee of future success. Our comprehension vastly exceeds that which obtained 5 centuries ago, save within a few exclusive circles of sages and mystics. We have unveiled numerous natural laws, notwithstanding our present inability to apply them, and our knowledge of reality as it exists has advanced significantly. Nevertheless, the enigmatic realm remains to be fully explored, and our perplexities remain manifold. There exists the enigma of our own individual existence, whatever its nature, There exists the problem of that which is broadly termed the not-self, pertaining to our physical form, our environment, our circumstances, and our conditions of living. If we are of an introspective disposition, there arises the problem of our specific emotional constitution and of the thoughts, desires, and instincts by which we govern our actions. Collective problems are legion. Why must there be suffering, starvation, and anguish? Why should the world in its entirety be held in the thrall of abject poverty, sickness, and distress? What purpose underlies all that we perceive, and what shall be the ultimate conclusion of global affairs, viewed in their totality? What is the destiny of the human race? What is its genesis? And what is the key to its present condition? Does existence extend beyond this single life, and is the sole significance to be found in that which is apparent and material? Such interrogations traverse all our minds at various intervals and have occupied the intellects of thinkers throughout the centuries. There have been numerous endeavors to respond to these inquiries, and as we examine them, we ascertain that the answers provided fall into three primary categories, and that three principal solutions are proffered for the consideration of mankind. These three solutions are as follows. First, realism. Another designation for this school is that of materialism. It posits that the representation we hold in consciousness of an external world is veridical, that phenomena are indeed as they appear, that matter and force, as we comprehend them, constitute the sole reality, and that it is impossible for man to transcend the tangible. He should remain content with facts as he perceives them, or as science articulates them. This is an entirely valid method of resolution, yet for some among us, it proves insufficient in that it does not extend far enough. In declining to engage with anything save that which can be proven and demonstrated, it halts at the precise juncture where the inquirer asks, "That is so, but why?" It omits from its calculus much that is known and recognized as truth by the average individual, even though he may be unable to articulate the rationale for his conviction. Men everywhere acknowledge the accuracy of the facts presented by the realistic school and by material science. Yet simultaneously, they intuit that there exists, underlying the proven objective manifestation, some vitalizing force and some coherent purpose which cannot be explicated in terms of matter alone. Secondly, there is the perspective which we might best designate as supernaturalism. Man becomes aware that perhaps, ultimately, phenomena are not precisely what they appear to be, and that much remains inexplicable. He awakens to the realization that he is not merely an aggregation of physical atoms, a material entity and a tangible body, but that latent within him reside a consciousness, a power, and a psychic nature which connect him to all other members of the human family, and to a power external to himself which he must perforce explain. It is this which has led, for instance, to the evolution of the Christian and Jewish perspectives, which posit a deity external to the solar system, who created it but who remained himself extraneous to it. These systems of thought teach that the world has been evolved by a power or being who constructed the solar system, and who directs the worlds with rectitude, sustaining our diminutive human existence in the hollow of his hand, and benevolently ordering all things according to some cryptic purpose which it is impossible for us, with our finite intellects, to glimpse, much less to comprehend. This constitutes the religious and supernatural viewpoint, founded upon the expanding self-consciousness of the individual and upon a recognition of his own divinity. Like the perspective of the realistic school, it embodies only a partial truth and requires to be complemented. The third line of thought we might designate the idealistic. It posits an evolutionary process within all manifestation and identifies life with the cosmic process. It is the diametric opposite of materialism, and it repositions the supernatural deity, predicated by the religionist as a great entity or life, who is evolving through, and by means of, the universe, just as man is evolving consciousness through the medium of an objective physical body. In these three standpoints, the frankly materialistic, the purely supernatural, and the idealistic, one discerns the three primary lines of thought which have been advanced as explications of the cosmic process. All of them are partial truths, yet none is complete without the others. All of them, when pursued in isolation, lead into obscure divergences and into darkness, leaving the central mystery unresolved. When synthesized, when amalgamated and blended, and when unified, they embody, perhaps, as much of the evolutionary truth as is possible for the human intellect to comprehend at the present stage of evolution. We are addressing momentous problems and meddling, perhaps, with high and lofty matters. We are trespassing into regions which are the acknowledged province of metaphysics, and we are endeavoring to condense into a few concise discourses that which all the libraries of the world embody. We are, therefore, attempting the impossible. All that we can do is to examine, briefly and cursorily, first one aspect of the truth and subsequently another. All we can possibly achieve is an outline of the fundamental trajectories of evolution, a study of their relationship to one another and to ourselves as conscious entities, and subsequently, an endeavor to blend and synthesize the limited knowledge accessible to us until some comprehensive concept of the process as a whole becomes more distinct. We must bear in mind, in connection with every statement of truth, that each is articulated from a specific vantage point. Until we have further cultivated our mental processes, and until we are capable of thinking in abstract terms as well as in concrete, it will remain impossible for us to comprehensively answer the question, what is truth? Nor to express any aspect of that truth in an impeccably impartial manner. Some individuals possess a broader horizon than others, and some can perceive the unity underlying the differing aspects. Others are inclined to believe that their outlook and interpretation constitute the sole validity. It is my hope in these discourses to expand, in some measure, our collective point of view. It is my anticipation that we shall arrive at the realization that the individual whose interest lies solely in the scientific aspect, and who restricts himself to the investigation of purely material manifestations, is just as deeply engaged in the study of the divine as his overtly religious brother who concerns himself exclusively with the spiritual dimension. Furthermore, let us recognize that the philosopher is, fundamentally, occupied with emphasizing the indispensable aspect of intelligence which bridges the material and the spiritual, blending them into a single coherent whole. Perchance, through the synthesis of these three lineages, science, religion, and philosophy, we may acquire a functional comprehension of truth as it exists, whilst simultaneously recalling that truth resides within our own being. No single individual's articulation of the truth constitutes the entire expression. Indeed, the sole objective of thought is to enable us to build constructively for ourselves and to labor within mental matter. I wish to delineate my schema this evening, to establish the foundation for our subsequent discourses, and to address the principal trajectories of evolution. The trajectory most immediately apparent is necessarily that which concerns the evolution of substance, the study of the atom, and the nature of atomic matter. In the coming week, we shall address that subject. Science possesses much to impart regarding the evolution of the atom, having traversed a considerable distance during the past 50 years from the standpoint held in the preceding century. Whereas the atom was formerly regarded as an indivisible unit of substance, it is now viewed as a center of energy or electric force. From the evolution of substance, we are led quite naturally to the evolution of forms or congeries of atoms. Subsequently, there shall open before us the intriguing consideration of forms other than the purely material forms existing in subtler substance, such as thought forms, racial forms, and the forms of organizations. In this dual inquiry, one of the aspects of deity will be emphasized, should you elect to employ that term, or one of the manifestations of nature, should you prefer that less sectarian appellation. We shall then be guided to the consideration of the evolution of intelligence, or the factor of mind which is manifesting as ordered purpose in all that we observe around us. This will reveal to us a world that proceeds not blindly upon its course, but rather one underpinned by a plan, a coordinated scheme, or an organized concept that is executing itself by means of the material form. One reason why phenomena appear so difficult to comprehend is rooted in the fact that we reside in the midst of a transition period wherein the plan remains imperfect. We stand too proximate to the machinery, being ourselves an integral component of the whole. We perceive a fragment here and another fragment there, yet the total grandeur of the concept is not apparent to us. We may possess a vision, or experience a lofty moment of revelation, but when we encounter the reality on every side, we question the possibility of the ideal materializing, for the intelligent relationship between the form and that which utilizes it appears far removed from adjustment. The recognition of the intelligence factor will inevitably lead us to the contemplation of the evolution of consciousness in its manifold forms, ranging from those types we consider subhuman, through the human, up to that which may logically be posited as superhuman consciousness. The subsequent inquiry that shall confront us will be, what lies behind all these factors? Is there, behind the objective form and its animating intelligence, an evolution corresponding to the I faculty, to the ego in man? Is there in nature, and in all that we observe around us, the outworking of the purpose of an individualized, self-conscious being? If such a being and such a fundamental existence persist, we should be able to discern somewhat his intelligent activities and observe his plans advancing toward fruition. Even if we cannot prove that God is, and that the deity exists, it may be possible to assert, at the very least, that the hypothesis of his existence is a reasonable one, a rational suggestion, and a plausible solution to all the mysteries we perceive around us. Yet, to accomplish this, it must be demonstrated that there is an intelligent purpose operating through forms of every variety, through races and nations, and through all that we see manifesting in modern civilization. The steps that this purpose has taken, and the gradual growth of the plan, must be demonstrated, and from that demonstration, we shall perhaps be enabled to discern what lies ahead for us in the coming stages. Let us, for a moment, consider what is signified by the phrase evolutionary process. These terms are employed constantly, and the average individual is well aware that the word evolution suggests an unfolding from within outwards, and an unrolling from an inner center. However, we require a clearer definition of the idea to obtain a superior concept. One of the finest definitions I have encountered is that which defines evolution as the unfolding of a continually increasing capacity to respond. Here we possess a definition that is highly illuminating as we consider the material aspect of manifestation. It involves the conception of vibration and of response to vibration. Although we may eventually be compelled to discard the term matter and employ some such expression as force center, the concept remains valid, and the response of the center to stimulation is discernible with even greater accuracy. In considering human consciousness, this same definition proves of genuine value. It entails the idea of a gradually increasing realization of the developing response of the subjective life to its environment. Eventually, it leads us onward and upward to the ideal of a unified existence which shall be the synthesis of all lines of evolution, and to the conception of a central life or force which blends and binds together all evolving units, whether they be units of matter, such as the atom of the chemist and the physicist, or units of consciousness, such as human beings. This constitutes evolution, the process that unfolds the life within all units, the developing urge that eventually merges all units and all groups until one attains that sum total of manifestation which may be termed nature or God, and which represents the aggregate of all states of consciousness. This is the God to whom the Christian refers when he asserts, "In him we live and move and have our being." This is the force or energy which the scientist recognizes, and this is the universal mind, or the oversoul of the philosopher. This, again, is the intelligent will that controls, formulates, binds, constructs, develops, and brings all things to an ultimate perfection. This is that perfection which is inherent in matter itself, and the tendency latent within the atom, within man, and within all that exists. This interpretation of the evolutionary process regards it not as the result of an external deity pouring his energy and wisdom upon a waiting world, but rather as something latent within that world itself, something that lies concealed at the heart of the chemical atom, within the heart of man himself, within the planet, and within the solar system. It is that ineffable quality which impels all toward the goal, and it is the force that is gradually extracting order from chaos, ultimate perfection from temporary imperfection, and good from seeming evil. Out of darkness and disaster, it brings forth that which we shall one day recognize as beautiful, right, and true. It encompasses all that we have envisioned and conceived during our highest and most exemplary moments. Evolution has also been defined as cyclic development, and this definition brings me to a concept which I am most anxious that we should thoroughly grasp. Nature repeats continuously until certain definite ends have been achieved, certain concrete results have been effected, and certain responses have been made to vibration. It is through the recognition of this accomplishment that the intelligent purpose of indwelling existence may be demonstrated. The methodology whereby this is attained is that of discrimination or intelligent election. Within the textbooks of divergent schools, numerous terms are employed to convey this identical general concept, such as natural selection or attraction and repulsion. I desire, if feasible, to eschew technical nomenclature, for such terms are utilized by one school of thought to signify a specific meaning, and by another something entirely distinct. If we can discover a term analogous in intent, yet unmoored from any particular lineage of thought, we may perceive fresh illumination cast upon our problem. Attraction and repulsion within the solar system are but the discriminating faculty of the atom or of man, demonstrating itself within the planets and the sun. It is discernible in atoms of every variety. We may term it adaptation, should we so elect, or the capacity to flourish and adapt the unit to its environment through the rejection of specific factors and the acceptance of others. It manifests in man as free will or the power of volition. In the spiritual man, it is observed as the tendency toward sacrifice, for such a man selects a specific course of action to benefit the group to which he belongs, rejecting that which is purely self-interested. We might ultimately define evolution as ordered change and constant mutation. It demonstrates itself in the ceaseless activity of the unit or the atom, the interaction between groups, and the interminable interplay of one force or type of energy upon another. We have observed that evolution, whether of matter, intelligence, consciousness, or spirit, consists of an ever-increasing capacity to respond to vibration. It progresses through constant alteration by the practice of a selective policy or the employment of the discriminative faculty, and by the method of psychic development or repetition. The stages distinguishing the evolutionary process may be broadly partitioned into three, corresponding to the phases in the existence of a human being: childhood, adolescence, and maturity. Where man is concerned, these stages may be traced within the human unit or within the race. Furthermore, as civilizations advance and proliferate, it should surely become possible to trace this identical threefold concept within the human family as a whole, thereby ascertaining the divine objective through the study of his image or reflection, man. We might express these three stages in more scientific terminology and link them with the three schools of thought previously referenced, studying them thusly: A. The stage of atomic energy. B. The stage of group coherency. C. The stage of unified or synthetic existence. Permit me to attempt to elucidate my meaning. The stage of atomic energy largely concerns the material aspect of life and corresponds to the period of childhood in the life of a man or a race. It is a time of realism, of intense activity, of development through action above all else, or of pure self-centeredness and self-interest. It generates the materialistic perspective and leads inevitably to selfishness. It involves the recognition of the atom as being entirely self-contained, and similarly, of the human unit as possessing a separate existence apart from all other units, devoid of relationship to others. Such a stage is observable in the less evolved races of the world, in small children, and in those of limited development. They are normally self-centered. Their energies are directed toward their own lives. They are occupied with the objective and the tangible, and they are characterized by a necessary and protective selfishness. It is a most requisite stage in the development and perpetuation of the race. From this selfish atomic period emerges another stage, that of group coherency. This involves the construction of forms or species until one possesses something coherent and individualized in itself as a whole, yet which is composed of many lesser individualities and forms. In connection with the human being, it corresponds to his awakening realization of responsibility and to the recognition of his station within the group. It necessitates an ability on his part to recognize a life greater than himself, whether that life is designated as God, or whether it is simply regarded as the life of the group to which a man, as a unit, belongs, that great identity of which we are each a constituent part. This corresponds to the school of thought which we termed the supernatural, and it must subsequently be succeeded by a truer and more expansive concept. As we have already observed, whereas the first or atomic stage developed by means of selfishness, or the self-centered life of the atom, the second stage advances to perfection through the sacrifice of the unit for the benefit of the many, and of the atom to the group in which it holds a place. This stage is something concerning which we, as yet, possess little practical knowledge, and is that which we often envision and desire. The third stage lies far ahead and may be considered by many a vain chimera. Yet some among us possess a vision which, even if unattainable at present, is logically possible provided our premises are correct and our foundation is rightly established. It is that of unified existence. Not only will there be separate units of consciousness, not only the differentiated atoms within the form, not only the group composed of a multiplicity of identities, but we shall possess the aggregate of all forms, of all groups, and of all states of consciousness blended, unified, and synthesized into a perfected whole. This whole you may term the solar system, you may term it nature, or you may term it God. Nomenclature is of no consequence. It corresponds to the adult stage in the human being. It is analogous to the period of maturity, and to that stage wherein a man is presumed to possess a definite purpose in life work. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.